In just 43 seconds, music legend Chaka Khan would deliver one of the most scathing verbal beatdowns ever witnessed on daytime television, reducing Jennifer Hudson to a stammering mess before storming off set in a blaze of righteous fury. What started as a seemingly cordial conversation about Khan's legendary career quickly devolved into an explosive confrontation that exposed Hudson's shocking disrespect and unprofessional conduct, leaving producers scrambling and audiences stunned by the sheer audacity of what unfolded live on air. The tension was palpable from the moment Chaka Khan stepped onto Jennifer Hudson's talk show set last night. The Queen of Funk herself, draped in her signature flowing fabrics and radiating decades of hard-earned wisdom, settled into the guest chair with the kind of regal presence that commanded immediate respect. Hudson, however, seemed oblivious to the magnitude of the icon sitting across from her, already betraying signs of the condescending attitude that would soon ignite a powder keg. "So, Chaka," Hudson began with a saccharine smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "I have to say, it's so inspiring to see artists from your generation still out there performing. Tell us, what keeps you motivated at this stage of your career?" The words hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Khan's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, her eyes narrowing just a fraction as she processed what could only be described as a backhanded compliment wrapped in false sweetness. The veteran performer had faced decades of industry politics, watched younger artists rise and fall, and survived every possible slight the music business could throw at her. She wasn't about to let Hudson's barely veiled ageism slide. "At this stage," Khan repeated slowly, her voice carrying that distinctive rasp that had captivated audiences for over 5 decades. "Jennifer, honey, let me stop you right there. I'm not some has-been clinging to past glory. I'm Chaka Khan. I've been selling out venues and making hits since before you were even a thought in your mother's mind." Hudson's forced smile flickered, clearly not expecting such direct pushback. The host attempted to recover with a nervous laugh that sounded more like a bark. "Oh no, that's not what I meant at all. I just think it's beautiful when seasoned artists—" "Seasoned?" Khan's interruption cut through the studio like a blade. "Child, you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself. I'm not seasoned, I'm legendary. There's a difference, and you'd do well to learn it." The audience fell silent, sensing the shift in energy as what should have been a respectful interview began to take on the characteristics of a confrontation. Hudson's production team could be seen frantically gesturing from behind the cameras, but their host seemed determined to dig herself deeper into a hole of her own making. "I think there might be some misunderstanding here," Hudson said, her voice taking on a defensive edge that betrayed her growing irritation. "I'm just trying to celebrate your long career and—" "Long career?" Khan leaned forward in her chair, her voice rising with indignation. "Jennifer, I need you to understand something. When you were winning American Idol, I had already won 10 Grammys. When you were learning to sing, I was headlining Madison Square Garden. So this patronizing tone you're taking with me? It ends now." Hudson's facade began to crumble as her true colors started showing through. The smile disappeared entirely, replaced by a look of barely contained annoyance. "Look, I'm trying to be respectful here, but you're being unnecessarily hostile. This is my show, and I'm just asking normal questions that any interviewer would ask." "Normal questions?" Khan's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Baby girl, there ain't nothing normal about disrespecting your elders on national television. You invited me here, supposedly to honor my contributions to music, and then you open with some condescending bullshit about my age and my relevance? The audacity is breathtaking." The studio atmosphere grew increasingly electric as crew members exchanged nervous glances and audience members began shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Hudson, clearly unused to having her authority challenged so directly on her own show, made the fatal mistake of trying to reassert control through intimidation. "I think you're overreacting," Hudson said, her voice now carrying a sharp edge of hostility. "Maybe if you'd let me finish my questions instead of interrupting every 2 seconds, we could have a productive conversation." Khan's eyes flashed with a fire that had been building since the interview began. "Overreacting? Oh honey, you haven't seen overreacting yet, but you're about to." The battle lines were drawn, and what came next would transform a simple talk show appearance into television history, setting the stage for an eruption that would leave both women's reputations forever altered. "Hudson, clearly feeling her authority slipping away, made the catastrophic decision to double down on her disrespectful approach. Leaning back in her chair with a dismissive gesture, she rolled her eyes in full view of the cameras before delivering what would become the match that lit the fuse. You know what, Chaka? I've interviewed plenty of legendary artists, and none of them acted like this. Maybe the problem isn't my questions. Maybe it's your attitude. I'm trying to give you a platform here, and you're being ungrateful. The word ungrateful hung in the air like a death sentence. Khan's entire demeanor shifted from controlled annoyance to barely contained rage. Her hands gripped the arms of her chair so tightly that her knuckles went white, and when she spoke, her voice carried the kind of cold fury that could freeze hell itself. Ungrateful? Khan's voice was dangerously quiet, the calm before the storm. Did this bitch just call me ungrateful? Jennifer, you have exactly one chance to apologize for what just came out of your mouth. Because what you just said is the most disrespectful, ignorant, entitled bullshit I've heard in 40 years in this business. Hudson's eyes widened at the profanity. But instead of backing down, she seemed to take Khan's anger as a personal challenge. The host's mask of professionalism finally slipped completely, revealing the arrogant, self-important person underneath. Excuse me? Did you just call me a bitch on my own show? Hudson shot back, her voice rising to match Khan's intensity. You're lucky I even invited you here. Do you know how many people would kill for this opportunity? You're sitting in that chair because I'm giving you relevance again. The audience gasped audibly at Hudson's shocking words. Even the camera operator seemed stunned, with one visibly shaking his head in disbelief. What Hudson had just said crossed every line of professional courtesy and basic human decency. But Khan's response would make Hudson's words look like gentle criticism in comparison. Relevance? Khan stood up slowly, her full height and presence now towering over the seated Hudson. You think you're giving me relevance? Child, I am relevance. I am the blueprint. I am the foundation that little girls like you built their careers on. You wouldn't have a career without artists like me paving the way, and you have the unmitigated gall to sit there and tell me I should be grateful. Hudson scrambled to her feet as well, not wanting to be literally looked down upon, but her 5'9" frame still couldn't match the commanding presence that Khan radiated. Look, I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. Khan cut her off with surgical precision. You meant every word of it. You think because you won a few awards and got your own little talk show that you can disrespect legends who were headlining world tours when you were still in diapers? You think you can patronize me, minimize my achievements, and then tell me I should be thankful for the privilege of being insulted on national television? The production team was in full panic mode now, with the director making frantic hand signals to cut to commercial, but both women were too far gone to notice or care. Hudson, realizing she was losing control of her own show, made one final desperate attempt to reassert dominance. This is exactly why people say you're difficult to work with, Hudson snapped, her voice dripping with venom. Everyone in the industry knows you have a reputation for being impossible. Maybe if you showed a little humility once in a while, people would respect you more. The silence that followed was deafening. Khan stared at Hudson with such intensity that the younger woman actually took a step backward. When Khan finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of decades of experience, struggle, and triumph. Difficult? Khan's laugh was sharp and bitter. Let me tell you about difficult, Jennifer. Difficult is being a black woman in the music industry in the 1970 seconds and fighting tooth and nail for respect. Difficult is watching little girls like you waltz into careers that women like me bled to make possible. Difficult is sitting here listening to someone who wouldn't exist without my sacrifices tell me I need to show humility. Hudson opened her mouth to respond, but Khan wasn't finished. The floodgates had opened, and 40 years of accumulated wisdom and justified anger came pouring out. You want to talk about reputation? My reputation was earned through decades of excellence, innovation, and breaking barriers. Your reputation is built on a reality show and a movie role that someone else wrote for you. I've influenced generations of artists, changed the course of popular music, and created a legacy that will outlast us both. What exactly have you contributed to the culture besides mediocrity, wrapped in false humility? The brutal assessment hit Hudson like a physical blow. Her face flushed red with a combination of embarrassment and rage, And when she spoke again, any pretense of professionalism was completely gone. "You know what? I'm done with this. You can take your so-called legacy and shove it. This is my show, and I don't have to sit here and be lectured by some washed-up has-been who can't accept that her time is over." The gasps from the audience were audible now, with several people standing up in shock at what they were witnessing. But if Hudson thought she had delivered a knockout blow, she was about to discover just how wrong she could be. Chaka Khan's face transformed into a mask of pure, calculated fury. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, she stood perfectly still, letting Hudson's words hang in the air like a noose around the host's own neck. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the power of thunder and the precision of lightning. "Washed up has-been?" Khan repeated slowly, each word dripping with dangerous calm. Did this nobody just call Chaka Khan a washed-up has-been? On television? In front of witnesses? She turned to address the stunned audience directly. "Y'all are witnessing history right now. You're watching a delusional child destroy her own career in real time." Hudson tried to interject, but Khan raised her hand with such authority that the younger woman's mouth snapped shut involuntarily. "No, baby girl. You had your turn. Now it's mine." Khan's voice began to rise, building like a gospel sermon from the depths of her soul. "You want to call me washed up? I'm 70 years old, and I can still out-sing you on your best day. I'm 70 years old, and I've got more soul in my pinky finger than you've got in your entire manufactured persona. I'm 70 years old and I'm still here, still relevant, still necessary, while little girls like you come and go like seasonal trends." The audience erupted in scattered applause and shouts of agreement, but Khan was just getting started. She began to pace back and forth like a caged lioness, her energy filling the entire studio. "You think winning American Idol makes you special? Child, that show is karaoke with production value. You think having your name on a talk show makes you important? This show will be canceled within 2 years, and you know why? Because you don't have the substance, the depth, or the respect for the culture that built everything you stand on." Hudson's face had gone from red to pale as the magnitude of her mistake became clear. She looked around desperately for support from her production team, but they were frozen in place, watching the systematic destruction of their host's credibility. "And let me tell you something else," Khan continued, her voice now reaching its full, magnificent power. "When you disrespect me, you disrespect every black woman who fought to make it possible for someone like you to even exist in this business. You disrespect Aretha. You disrespect Diana. You disrespect Gladys. You disrespect every queen who bled so that mediocre talents like you could walk through doors that we had to kick down." The truth of those words hit the studio like a physical force. Several audience members were now openly applauding, while others sat in stunned silence at the verbal masterclass they were witnessing. Hudson finally found her voice again, but it came out as a weak, desperate whisper. "Chaka, please. I think we've both said things we don't mean. Oh, I meant every goddamn word." Khan cut her off with finality. "And so did you. The difference is, my words were truth, and yours were the delusional ramblings of someone who's forgotten where they came from and who made their success possible." Khan moved closer to Hudson, close enough that their conversation became intensely personal, despite being broadcast to millions. "Let me give you some free education, since it's clear nobody else has. Respect isn't something you give when it's convenient. It's not something you withhold when you feel like flexing your tiny bit of power. Respect for legends like me should be automatic, should be in your DNA as an artist. The fact that it isn't tells me everything I need to know about your character." Hudson was now visibly shaking. Whether from rage or fear was unclear. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "I want you off my set. Right now. Security." Khan threw her head back and laughed with genuine amusement. "Security? Oh, honey, I don't need to be escorted out. I wouldn't spend another second in this toxic environment if you paid me. This whole production is beneath me. And frankly, I'm embarrassed that I lowered myself to appear on this amateur hour disaster you call television." She began walking toward the exit, then turned back one final time to deliver what would become the most quoted moment of the entire confrontation. "Jennifer Hudson, mark my words. You will remember this day for the rest of your career, not because of what I said to you, but because of what you revealed about yourself. You showed the world who you really are when you thought you had power over someone you considered beneath you. That's your legacy now. Not your awards, not your movies, not your little talk show. The day you disrespected Chaka Khan on national television. The studio fell completely silent, except for the sound of Khan's heels clicking against the floor as she made her exit. Hudson stood frozen in place, her face a mixture of fury and dawning horror as she realized the full implications of what had just transpired. As Khan reached the studio exit, she paused and delivered her final statement without even bothering to turn around. And for the record, baby girl, legends don't get kicked off shows. We walk away from them. The door closed behind her with a definitive click that seemed to echo through the stunned studio. Hudson stood alone on her own set, surrounded by crew members who couldn't meet her eyes, and an audience that was already pulling out their phones to share what they had just witnessed. In those final moments of silence, everyone present understood that they had just watched more than a simple celebrity confrontation. They had witnessed the spectacular self-destruction of a host who had fatally underestimated the power, dignity, and righteous fury of a true legend. Hudson's career would never recover from the scorched earth devastation that Chaka Khan had left in her wake, and the internet was already beginning to immortalize every brutal second of the encounter that would forever be known as the day Jennifer Hudson learned that some queens cannot and will not be disrespected.